The battlefield was silent but not empty. On the ruins of a shattered alien world, a loyal dog sniffed through the ashes and found what no soldier expected: a wounded enemy. His owner, Sergeant Jake Morrison, stood frozen between duty and mercy. One choice in that moment of silence would decide the fate of two empires and rewrite the galaxy's future. The discovery in the ruins. The twin suns of Kepler 442b cast long purple shadows across the battlefield as Sergeant Jake Morrison adjusted his tactical helmet. The silence was deafening after 3 days of constant warfare. Smoke still rose from the crystalline structures that had once been a Vorthon military outpost, their alien architecture now reduced to glittering fragments scattered across the crimson soil. Jake checked his rifle one more time before giving the signal. "Come on, Rex. Time to earn our keep." The German Shepherd mix lifted his scarred head, brown eyes alert and ready. Rex had been Jake's partner for 4 years, serving in the Terran Defense Corps Search and Rescue Division. Together, they had saved countless lives across a dozen worlds, but this mission was different. This time, they were searching for survivors in enemy territory. The Vorthon Empire had been humanity's greatest threat for over a decade. Their advanced technology and ruthless tactics had pushed human colonies to the brink of extinction. The battle for Kepler 442b was supposed to be a turning point, a chance to push back against their relentless expansion. Instead, it had become a bloodbath for both sides. Jake moved carefully through the wreckage, his boots crunching on broken crystal formations. The Vorthons built everything from their native crystals, structures that could withstand plasma bombardment, but shattered like glass under kinetic impact. The irony wasn't lost on him that something so beautiful could house such destructive intent. Rex padded silently beside him, nose twitching as he analyzed the countless scents in the air. Burned metal, ozone from energy weapons, and something else. Something organic that didn't belong. The dog suddenly stopped, ears perked forward in that familiar stance that meant he'd found something important. "What is it, boy?" Jake whispered, following Rex's gaze toward a collapsed section of what might have been a command center. The dog whined softly, a sound Jake had learned meant someone was alive but badly hurt. They approached the debris field cautiously. The Vorthons were known for leaving traps, and Jake wasn't about to let his guard down just because the shooting had stopped. Rex, however, seemed unusually agitated, pawing at the ground and looking back at Jake with what could only be described as urgency. Then Jake saw it. A pale blue hand protruding from beneath a large crystal slab, fingers twitching weakly. His training kicked in immediately. Survivor located, species unknown, medical attention required. But as he got closer, his blood ran cold. The hand was definitely Vorthon, recognizable by the distinctive 6 fingers and the metallic tattoos that covered the skin like circuit patterns. Jake's finger found his rifle trigger instinctively. This was the enemy. These creatures had destroyed entire human colonies, enslaved populations, and shown no mercy in their conquest. Military protocol was clear. Enemy combatants were to be secured and interrogated, not rescued. But Rex was already at the trapped figure's side, whining and gently pawing at the debris. The dog looked back at Jake with those expressive eyes that seemed to say, "What are you waiting for?" "Rex, get back here," Jake commanded, but his voice lacked conviction. The dog ignored him completely, something Rex had never done in all their years together. Instead, the animal began carefully digging around the crystal slab, trying to free whoever was trapped beneath. Jake knelt down and peered under the debris. What he saw made him gasp. It wasn't just any Vorthon soldier. It was female, probably young by their standards, with the distinctive pale blue skin and silver markings that indicated high rank. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Instead of the cold, calculating stare he expected from the enemy, he saw fear, pain, and something else: hope. She said something in the Vorthon language, her voice barely a whisper. Jake didn't understand the words, but the tone was universal. She was asking for help. Rex barked once sharply, then looked at Jake with what could only be described as disappointment. The message was clear. Are you going to help her or not? Jake stared at the trapped alien for a long moment, his mind racing. Everything he'd been taught, every briefing he'd received, every propaganda vid he'd watched, told him this creature was his enemy. She would kill him without hesitation if their positions were reversed. Helping her would be treason, maybe even grounds for court-martial. But Rex trusted her, and Rex had never been wrong about people, human or otherwise. Jake made his decision. He holstered his rifle and grabbed the crystal slab. "Easy there," he said softly, more to himself than to her. "Let's get you out of there." The crystal was heavier than it looked, and Jake had to brace himself against another piece of debris to get leverage. As he lifted, the Vorthan woman gasped and tried to pull herself free. That's when Jake saw the extent of her injuries. Her left leg was bent at an unnatural angle, and dark purple blood was seeping through tears in her form-fitting armor. Rex immediately moved to her side, gently, licking her face in the universal canine gesture of comfort. To Jake's amazement, she didn't flinch away. Instead, she reached up with a shaking hand and touched the dog's head, speaking softly in her alien language. "Can you understand me?" Jake asked, kneeling beside her. She turned those large violet eyes toward him and nodded slowly. "Little," she whispered in heavily accented English. "You help?" "Yeah," Jake found himself saying. "I'm going to help." He pulled out his medical kit and began assessing her injuries. The leg was definitely broken, and she had several deep cuts that needed attention. As he worked, she watched him with a mixture of confusion and gratitude. "Why?" she asked finally. Jake paused in applying a pressure bandage to her arm. It was a good question. Why was he risking everything to help someone who should be his enemy? He looked at Rex, who was lying protectively beside the wounded alien, his tail wagging slightly. The dog had seen something in her that Jake was only beginning to understand. She wasn't a monster or a conquest-obsessed warrior. She was just another living being, hurt and afraid and far from home. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. She studied his face for a long moment, then spoke a single word in her language that sounded almost like music, then in English. "Thank you." As Jake continued treating her wounds, she began to speak, slowly at first, then with growing urgency. Her name was Zara, and she was a communications officer with the Vorthan fleet. But more importantly, she had information that could change everything. "Attack," she said, gripping Jake's arm with surprising strength. "Big attack, tomorrow. Your people. Danger." Jake's blood chilled. "What kind of attack?" Zara struggled to find the English words. "Ship. Many ships. From dark space. Not just Vorthans. Others." "Others," Jake pressed. "What others?" But before she could answer, the distant sound of engines filled the air. Human engines by the sound of them. Jake's rescue team was approaching. Zara heard them too, and fear filled her eyes. "They kill me," she whispered. "Please." Jake looked at Rex, who was watching the approaching vehicles with calm alertness. The dog looked back at him, and Jake could swear he saw understanding in those brown eyes. Rex trusted Zara, and Jake trusted Rex. But more than that, he was beginning to trust his own instincts about this strange alien, who seemed so different from everything he'd been told about her species. The convoy was getting closer. In minutes, they would be here, and Jake would have to make another choice. Turn Zara over to military intelligence for interrogation, or find a way to protect her until she could deliver whatever warning she was trying to give. Rex solved the dilemma by moving protectively in front of Zara, his stance clearly saying that anyone who wanted to hurt her would have to go through him first. Jake smiled despite the situation. "Okay, boy, I get the message." He activated his comm unit. "Rescue actual, this is Morrison. Found one survivor, badly injured. Requesting immediate medical evacuation to field hospital." "Copy that, Morrison. Human or alien?" Jake looked at Zara, who was watching him with those incredible violet eyes, and Rex, who was panting happily as if everything was going according to his plan. "Survivor," Jake said simply. "Just a survivor who needs help." As the rescue vehicles approached, Jake made another decision that would change the course of his life forever. He removed his sidearm and placed it on the ground beside Zara. "Trust," he said, meeting her eyes. "I trust you." Zara stared at the weapon for a moment, then slowly pushed it back toward him. "Trust," she agreed, the word carrying more weight than any treaty ever signed. Rex barked once as if approving of their mutual decision, then settled down to wait for the medics. Whatever came next, Jake knew there was no turning back. He had made his choice, guided by the wisdom of a dog who saw beyond the surface to the heart of things. The rescue team was almost there, and with them would come questions, protocols, and consequences Jake couldn't even imagine. But as he looked at Zara, alive because he chose compassion over duty, he knew he would make the same choice again. Sometimes, the most important battles weren't fought with weapons or tactics or superior technology. Sometimes, they were won by the simple act of extending a hand to someone who needed help, regardless of what uniform they wore or what world they called home. Rex had known that from the beginning. It had just taken Jake a little longer to figure it out. Unlikely trust forms. The medical bay of Forward Base Alpha hummed with activity as Jake sat beside Zara's recovery bed. 3 hours had passed since the rescue team arrived, and the questions hadn't stopped. Command wanted answers, the intelligence officers wanted interrogation sessions, and everyone wanted to know why Sergeant Morrison had risked his life for an enemy combatant. Jake had given them the same answer every time. She had vital intelligence about an imminent attack. It was technically true, but it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was that Rex had seen something in Zara that transcended the boundaries of war, and Jake had learned to trust his partner's judgment above all else. Rex lay curled at the foot of Zara's bed, having refused all attempts to remove him from the medical bay. The base veterinarian had checked him over and declared him fit for duty, but the dog showed no interest in leaving his new friend's side. Even now, his ears were perked and alert, watching every person who entered the room with protective intensity. Zara stirred as the latest round of pain medication began to wear off. Her violet eyes opened slowly, taking in the sterile white walls and the medical equipment surrounding her. For a moment, panic flashed across her features until she saw Jake sitting nearby. "Still here," she said softly. Her English already noticeably improved from their brief conversations with the medical staff. "Told you I would be," Jake replied. "How are you feeling?" She attempted to sit up, wincing as the movement aggravated. Her broken leg. "Better. Your healers, doctors, they are skilled." Dr. Sarah Chen, the base's chief medical officer, had been amazed by Vorthon physiology. Their bones were denser than human bones. Their blood carried oxygen more efficiently, and their healing rate was nearly twice as fast as a human's. Zara's injuries, which would have kept a human soldier bedridden for weeks, were already showing signs of significant improvement. "Zara," Jake said carefully, "you mentioned an attack yesterday, before the rescue team arrived. Can you tell me more about that?" Her expression darkened, and she glanced nervously at the door. "Safe to speak. Here?" Jake nodded. "The room is secure, it's just us." Zara looked at Rex, who had lifted his head at the sound of her voice. She reached down and scratched behind his ears, a gesture that seemed to calm her. "Your companion animal, Rex, he is wise. He sees truth when others see only surface." "That's Rex for you," Jake agreed. "He's never steered me wrong." "Now, about this attack." Zara took a deep breath as if preparing herself for something difficult. "The war. It is not what either of our peoples believe it to be." Jake frowned. "What do you mean?" Was communications officer. I monitor all transmissions, encrypt messages, decode intelligence. 3 days ago, I discovered something that should not exist." She paused, struggling with the English words to explain something complex. Rex seemed to sense her frustration and moved closer, resting his head on her good leg. The simple gesture of comfort seemed to give her strength. "There are others," she continued, "not Vorthon, not human. They speak in shadows, make agreements in darkness. They want our war to continue." "Third party?" Jake leaned forward. Who? They call themselves the Syndicate. Arms dealers, technology merchants, profiteers of conflict. They sell weapons to both sides, provide intelligence that prolongs fighting, ensure neither side wins decisive victory. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. You're saying this whole war is being manipulated? Not manipulated. Fed. Like feeding fire with fuel. Every time peace seems possible, new intelligence arrives. New weapons. New reasons to fight. Zara's voice grew stronger as she spoke, her accent becoming less pronounced as her passion overcame her linguistic limitations. I found their communications 3 days ago. They plan something called Final Solution. One massive attack that will cripple both our fleets, leave both our worlds defenseless. Defenseless against what? Against them. The Syndicate has been preparing for years. They want our resources, our worlds, our populations as workforce. The war was never about territory or ideology. It was about weakening us until we cannot resist conquest. Jake stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that looked out over the base's landing pads. Everything she was saying made a horrible kind of sense. The war had dragged on for over a decade, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. Every time one side seemed to be winning, something would happen to turn the tide back the other way. When? He asked. When is this final solution supposed to happen? Soon. Very soon. They wait for both fleets to engage in major battle, then strike when ships are damaged and scattered. But there's no major battle planned, Jake said, turning back to her. The fighting here on Kepler 442b was just a border skirmish. Zara's eyes widened. No. Intel said massive human fleet approaching. Forthon Command ordered full defensive deployment. Battle should begin. She looked at the chronometer on the wall. In 6 hours. Jake's blood ran cold. If Zara was right, both the human and Vorthon fleets were sailing into a trap, expecting to fight each other while a third party prepared to destroy them both. I have to report this, Jake said, moving toward the comm panel. Wait. Zara's voice stopped him. You believe me? Jake looked at her, really looked at her. This alien woman who should have been his enemy, lying injured in a human medical bay, protected by a dog who had somehow seen through the barriers of species in conflict to recognize a kindred spirit. Yeah, he said. I believe you. Why? Jake glanced at Rex, who was watching their conversation with intelligent eyes. Because Rex trusts you, and Rex is a better judge of character than any intelligence report. For the first time since he'd found her, Zara smiled. It transformed her entire face, making her look younger and somehow more human despite her alien features. Your people will not believe, she said. Vorthon speaking truth? Impossible. Maybe, Jake admitted. But we have to try. He activated the comm panel and requested an immediate priority channel to command. While they waited for the connection, Zara spoke again. Jake, that is your name, yes? Jake Morrison? That's right. If your leaders do not believe, if they think this is Vorthon deception, what will you do? Jake considered the question. Military protocol was clear about prisoners and intelligence from enemy sources. But this was bigger than protocol. If Zara was right, thousands of lives on both sides were at stake. Then we'll have to find another way, he said simply. The comm panel chimed, and Colonel Harrison's gruff voice filled the room. Morrison, what's so urgent it couldn't wait for the scheduled briefing? Sir, I have critical intelligence about an imminent attack on both human and Vorthon fleets. Source? Jake looked at Zara, who nodded encouragingly. The Vorthon prisoner, sir. She claims to have evidence of third-party manipulation of the conflict. A long pause. Morrison, you know the protocols regarding enemy intelligence. Unverified sources, potential disinformation. Sir, with respect, this intelligence suggests an attack within hours, if there's even a chance she's telling the truth. Sergeant Morrison. The colonel's voice carried a warning. You are not qualified to assess the validity of enemy intelligence. The prisoner will be transferred to Intelligence Division for proper interrogation. You are to have no further contact with her. But, sir, That's an order, Sergeant. Harrison out. The comm channel closed, leaving Jake staring at the blank screen. Zara watched him with those violet eyes, her expression understanding but sad. They do not believe, she said softly. No, Jake admitted. They don't. Rex whined softly and moved closer to both of them, as if sensing the gravity of the situation. Jake knelt down and scratched the dog's ears, thinking furiously. Zara, this evidence you mentioned, do you still have it? She nodded and pointed to a small device attached to her armor, which the medical team had placed with her personal effects. Communication logs, encryption keys, transmission records, all on personal data storage. Jake picked up the device, a crystalline structure no bigger than his thumb. Can you access this? Show me the evidence? Yes, but your technology may not be compatible with ours. Let's find out. For the next hour, Jake and Zara worked together, trying to interface the Vorthan data storage with the human computer systems. Rex supervised the process, occasionally barking when their frustration levels rose too high, reminding them to stay calm and focused. Finally, they managed to establish a connection. The data that flowed across the screen was damning. Communications between syndicate operatives embedded in both human and Vorthan command structures, orders to provide false intelligence, shipments of weapons and technology designed to prolong the conflict, and most chilling of all, detailed plans for the final solution. My God, Jake breathed. They've been planning this for years. Yes, Zara confirmed, and they are already in position. Look at these coordinates. Jake studied the star charts displayed on the screen. The syndicate fleet was positioned perfectly to catch both human and Vorthan forces in a devastating crossfire once they engaged each other. We have to warn them, Jake said. Both sides. How? Your commanders do not trust Vorthan intelligence. My commanders think I'm dead or captured. Jake stood up, his mind racing. Traditional channels were closed to them, but that didn't mean they were helpless. Rex barked once, as if agreeing with whatever plan was forming in Jake's head. There might be another way, Jake said slowly, but it's going to require trust. Complete trust between all three of us. Zara met his eyes. What do you need me to do? Help me steal a ship. For a moment, Zara just stared at him. Then, despite their dire circumstances, she began to laugh. It was a musical sound, surprisingly warm and infectious. Even Rex's tail began to wag. You are either very brave or very foolish, Jake Morrison, she said. Probably both, Jake admitted. But sometimes foolish bravery is exactly what the universe needs. As if in response to his words, alarms began blaring throughout the base. The overhead speakers crackled to life with an urgent announcement. All personnel to battle stations. Incoming transmission indicates massive Vorthan fleet movement. This is not a drill. Jake and Zara looked at each other with grim understanding. The trap was being set, and time was running out. Rex, Jake said, looking down at his faithful partner. I hope you're ready for the most important mission of our lives. The dog barked once confidently, and Jake knew they were as ready as they'd ever be. The hidden truth revealed. The service corridors beneath Forward Base Alpha were dimly lit and rarely patrolled, making them perfect for their desperate plan. Jake helped Zara navigate the narrow passages, her injured leg still causing her to limp despite the accelerated healing. Rex padded silently ahead of them, his keen senses alert for any sign of danger. Transport bay should be just ahead, Jake whispered, consulting the base schematics on his portable scanner. The question is whether we can get to a ship before... Alarms blared overhead, cutting off his words. Red emergency lights began flashing throughout the corridor, and the base's announcement system crackled to life. All military personnel report to duty stations immediately. Condition red. Repeat, condition red. This is not a drill. What does that mean? Zara asked, her violet eyes reflecting the pulsing emergency lights. It means both our fleets have been detected on approach vectors, Jake replied grimly. The battle's about to begin. They reached the transport bay access panel, and Jake quickly input his authorization codes. To his relief, they still worked. Command hadn't revoked his access yet, probably too busy preparing for combat to worry about one sergeant's security clearance. The transport bay was a hive of activity. Pilots were rushing to their fighters, ground crews were loading ammunition and fuel, and officers were shouting orders over the din of engines and machinery. In the chaos, 3 figures and a dog might just go unnoticed. There, Jake pointed, to a sleek reconnaissance ship parked near the bay's far wall. The Pathfinder. She's fast, lightly armed, but equipped with advanced communication arrays. Can you pilot her? Zara asked. I can fly anything with engines, Jake said with more confidence than he felt. The question is whether we can reach her without being spotted. Rex solved that problem by trotting confidently across the bay, his official search and rescue vest making him look like he belonged. Jake and Zara followed, Jake's sergeant's stripes and Zara's medical bracelet giving them just enough authority to avoid immediate questions. They were halfway to the ship when a familiar voice called out behind them. Morrison, what the hell are you doing here? Jake turned to see Captain Rodriguez, his commanding officer, striding toward them with a confused expression. Behind him were 2 military police officers. Sir, I can explain. You were ordered to stay away from the prisoner, Rodriguez snapped. And now I find you escorting her through a restricted area during a combat alert? Captain, please, you have to listen to me, Jake said urgently. The attack, it's not what we think. There's a third party involved. Enough. Rodriguez cut him off. MPs, arrest Sergeant Morrison for violation of direct orders and potential treason. Secure the alien for immediate transfer to intelligence. The military police stepped forward, but Rex positioned himself between them and Zara, a low growl rumbling in his throat. The dog's usual friendly demeanor was gone, replaced by the protective instincts of a trained military animal. Sir, one of the MPs said uncertainly, the dog. Subdue the animal if necessary, Rodriguez ordered. That was a mistake. Jake's voice cut through the noise of the transport bay like a whip crack. Touch my dog, and you'll answer to me. The sergeant's tone carried the authority of someone who had led men through combat and earned their absolute loyalty. The MPs hesitated, and in that moment of uncertainty, Zara stepped forward. Captain Rodriguez, she said, her accented English clear and precise. I am Lieutenant Zara Veltar of the Vorthon Communications Division. I claim diplomatic immunity under the Kepler Accords and request immediate audience with your fleet commander. Rodriguez stared at her. The Kepler Accords were suspended when hostilities began. Incorrect, Zara replied calmly. They were never formally revoked by either government. Article 7 clearly states that diplomatic immunity remains in effect for intelligence officers bearing information vital to civilian populations. Jake looked at her with new respect. She wasn't just a communications officer. She was someone with detailed knowledge of interstellar law. Furthermore, Zara continued, pulling out her crystalline data storage device, I possess evidence of crimes against both our peoples that supersede current military protocols. Rodriguez hesitated. As a career military officer, he knew the importance of following proper procedures, especially when dealing with potential diplomatic situations. What kind of evidence? He asked finally. Zara activated the device, and a holographic display materialized above it. The data scrolled past in both human and Vorthon languages, showing communication logs, financial records, and strategic plans. The Corvani Syndicate, she said simply. They have been manipulating our conflict for 10 years, selling weapons to both sides while preparing for their own conquest. Rodriguez studied the display, his expression growing increasingly grim. As a veteran of the early war years, he had witnessed too many coincidences, too many perfectly timed intelligence leaks that seemed to benefit no one except arms dealers. This could be fabricated, he said, but his tone suggested he was beginning to have doubts. Cross-reference the data with your own intelligence archives, Zara challenged. Check the patterns, weapon shipments that arrived just before major offensives, intelligence leaks that prevented decisive victories, financial records showing payments to officials in both our governments. Jake watched as understanding dawned on the captain's face. Rodriguez had been fighting this war long, enough to recognize the truth when he saw it. My God, the captain whispered. If this is accurate. It is, Zara said firmly. And if we do not act immediately, both our fleets will be destroyed within the hour. As if summoned by her words, the transport bay's main communication system activated, broadcasting an urgent message from Fleet Command. All vessels, be advised. Long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures consistent with unknown technology. Source unknown. Distance. Wait, they're jamming our scanners. We're going in blind. Rodriguez looked at the data display. Again, then at Jake, then at Rex, who sat calmly watching the proceedings as if he understood every word. Sergeant Morrison, Rodriguez said finally, your assessment of this intelligence? Sir, Rex found her first. My dog has never been wrong about people. If he trusts her, that's good enough for me. You're willing to stake your career on the judgment of a dog? Jake looked down at Rex, remembering all the times his faithful partner had guided him to trapped survivors, warned him of hidden dangers, and shown him the true character of people they encountered. I'm willing to stake a lot more than my career, sir. Rodriguez made his decision. MPs, stand down. Sergeant Morrison, get that ship ready for immediate departure. Sir? One of the military police officers questioned. You heard me. And Patch O. Me through to Admiral Harrison immediately. As Jake and Zara headed for the Pathfinder, Rodriguez activated his command communicator. Admiral, this is Captain Rodriguez at Forward Base Alpha. I need an immediate channel to Fleet Command. We have intelligence suggesting the approaching Vorthon fleet is not our primary threat. The response was immediate and heated. Rodriguez, you're out of line. We don't have time for speculation. Sir, this is not speculation. We have documented evidence of third-party manipulation of the conflict. Unknown vessels are already in position to attack both fleets. A long pause. What's your source, Captain? Rodriguez looked at Zara, who was helping Jake run through the Pathfinder's pre-flight checklist. A Vorthon intelligence officer who risked her life to bring us this information. A Vorthon? Rodriguez, have you lost your mind? Maybe, sir. But if I'm right, we're about to lose both our fleets to an enemy we never knew existed. Rex barked from inside the ship, and Jake called out, Captain, we're ready for departure. Rodriguez made his final decision. Admiral, I'm authorizing a reconnaissance mission to verify this intelligence. If we're wrong, you can court-martial me. If you're right, Rodriguez, you'll have saved 2 civilizations. The Pathfinder's engines roared to life, and Jake felt the familiar thrill of piloting a military-grade vessel. Beside him, Zara worked the communication arrays with practiced efficiency, while Rex settled into a specially designed restraint harness in the cargo area. Communications established with both fleets, Zara reported. But Captain, the Syndicate jammers are already affecting long-range sensors. Then we'll have to get close enough to see them with our own eyes, Jake replied, pushing the engines to maximum thrust. As they cleared the atmosphere of Kepler 442b, the scope of the trap became clear. Both human and Vorthon fleets were approaching the designated battle zone, unaware that a third force was lying in wait behind a nearby asteroid field. There, Zara pointed to a cluster of energy signatures that didn't match either human or Vorthon technology. 18 heavy cruisers, at least 40 smaller vessels. They're using adaptive camouflage, but our close-range sensors can penetrate it. Jake activated the ship's recording systems, capturing detailed scans of the hidden fleet. The vessels were unlike anything in either military's database, their design suggesting technology far in advance of current human or Vorthon capabilities. How long do we have? Jake asked. Zara consulted her instruments. The fleets will engage in approximately 20 minutes. The Syndicate will wait until both sides have sustained damage, then attack from their concealed positions. Time to make some very important phone calls, Jake said, opening communication channels to both approaching fleets. Rex barked once from his harness, as if to say, let's save the galaxy. Jake couldn't have agreed more. Race against annihilation, though. Communication array aboard the Pathfinder crackled with static as Jake and Zara desperately tried to establish contact with both approaching fleets. Time was running out. On the tactical display, the human and Vorthon forces were less than 15 minutes from engagement range, while the hidden Syndicate fleet remained motionless behind the asteroid field, waiting for the perfect moment to spring their trap. Human fleet, this is Sergeant Morrison aboard reconnaissance vessel Pathfinder, Jake transmitted. I have critical intelligence regarding unknown hostile forces in your operational area. The response was immediate and harsh. Pathfinder, you are not authorized to be in this sector. Return to base immediately or be considered hostile. Admiral, you have to listen to me, Jake pressed. There's a third fleet hiding behind the Kepler 7 asteroid field. They're planning to attack both our forces once we engage the Vorthons. Sergeant Morrison, came the cold reply. You are in violation of direct orders and operating with enemy personnel. Your transmission is being logged as potential enemy disinformation. Jake slammed his fist against the console in frustration. They're not listening. Try the Vorthon fleet, Zara suggested, her fingers dancing across the alien communication controls. Perhaps my people will be more reasonable. She activated the Vorthon communication protocols and began speaking in her native language. The response came quickly, but Jake could tell from her expression that it wasn't going well. They believe this is a human deception, she said, switching back to English. My commander says no human would work with a Vorthon unless they were being coerced. Rex whined from his harness, sensing the mounting tension. The dog's ears were perked forward and his tail was rigid with stress. 12 minutes to engagement, Jake announced, watching the tactical display. Both fleets are maintaining course and speed. Zara stared at the screen showing the hidden Syndicate ships. We need proof they cannot ignore. Something that forces both sides to acknowledge the threat. What kind of proof? Jake asked. Direct engagement, Zara said simply. If we can force the Syndicate to reveal themselves. Jake understood immediately. You want us to attack them? One ship against an entire fleet? Not attack, provoke. Make them respond in a way that both fleets will detect. It was a desperate plan, but Jake could see the logic. The Pathfinder was fast and maneuverable, equipped with advanced stealth capabilities. If they could get close enough to the Syndicate fleet to force a response. It's suicide, Jake said bluntly. Perhaps, Zara agreed. But it is better than watching both our peoples destroy each other. Rex barked once sharply, and both humans turned to look at him. The dog was staring directly at Jake with those intelligent brown eyes, his expression somehow conveying absolute confidence in his human partner's abilities. Rex thinks we can do it, Jake said with a grim smile. Then we will do it, Zara replied firmly. Jake plotted a course toward the asteroid field, using the Pathfinder's stealth systems to mask their approach. The ship's advanced hull coating would absorb most sensor sweeps, making them nearly invisible until they were practically on top of their targets. Syndicate vessels dead ahead, Zara reported as they slipped between the massive asteroids. I count 23 ships total. The largest appears to be their command vessel. Jake studied the formation on his display. The Syndicate fleet was positioned in a classic ambush formation, with heavy cruisers ready to deliver devastating broadside attacks and smaller vessels positioned to prevent escape. There, he pointed to the command ship. If we can get close enough to plant a tracking beacon on their hull, it'll broadcast their position to both fleets. How close is close enough? Zara asked. Close enough to touch. Zara's violet eyes widened. You plan to ram them? Not ram. Kiss and run. We'll use the ship's external manipulator arms to attach the beacon, then get out of there before they can respond. 10 minutes to fleet engagement, Zara announced. Jake pushed the Pathfinder's engines to their limit, weaving between asteroids, toward the Syndicate command ship. The vessel was massive, easily 3 times the size of any human or Vorthon warship, its hull covered in what appeared to be adaptive armor plating. 500 meters, Jake announced, preparing manipulator arms. Jake, Zara said quietly, if this does not work, it'll work, Jake replied with more confidence than he felt. It has to. Rex barked once, a sound of encouragement and support that somehow made Jake feel better about their insane plan. 200 meters. They haven't detected us yet. The Syndicate command ship loomed before them, its alien architecture both beautiful and menacing. Strange symbols covered its hull, and weapon ports bristled along its flanks like the spines of some massive predator. 100 meters, deploying beacon. Jake activated the ship's external manipulator arms, watching on the monitor as they extended toward the enemy vessel's hull. The tracking beacon was no larger than his fist, but it contained enough broadcast power to penetrate any jamming field. Contact, he announced as the manipulator arms touched the alien hull. Attaching beacon. That's when everything went wrong. Alarms screamed throughout the Syndicate ship as their stealth systems finally detected the Pathfinder's presence. Weapon systems powered up along the command vessel's hull, and Jake could see smaller ships breaking formation to pursue them. Beacon attached, Zara reported, but they know we are here. Hold on, Jake warned, throwing the Pathfinder into a diving turn that used a nearby asteroid for cover. Energy beams lashed out from the Syndicate ships, superheating the space, where they had been moments before. Beacon is active, Zara announced. Both fleets should be receiving the signal. Jake's comm system suddenly exploded with activity as both human and Vorthan forces detected the tracking beacon's signal. Unknown vessels detected in asteroid field, came the voice of Admiral Harrison. Energy signatures do not match any known technology. A Vorthan transmission followed immediately, Zara translating as her commander spoke. Vorthan command confirms unknown fleet presence. These are not human vessels. Finally, Jake breathed, executing another evasive maneuver as Syndicate fighters closed in on their position. But their relief was short-lived. On the tactical display, Jake watched in horror as the Syndicate fleet broke cover completely, abandoning stealth in favor of an immediate attack on both human and Vorthan forces. They are not waiting for the fleets to engage each other, Zara said urgently. The beacon forced them to act now. Before either side is weakened by fighting each other, Jake realized. This is going to be even harder than they planned. The space around them erupted into chaos as 3 different fleets began exchanging fire. Syndicate weapons proved devastatingly effective, their energy beams slicing through both human and Vorthan shields with terrifying ease. We have to help them, Jake said, watching as ships from both sides began taking heavy damage. How? Zara asked. We are one small ship against a superior force. Rex barked again, and Jake looked back at his faithful partner. The dog was staring at the communication console, tail wagging slightly. Communication, Jake said suddenly. That's what we do best. We coordinate. He opened channels to both fleets simultaneously. All vessels, this is Pathfinder. We have a detailed intelligence on Syndicate weapon systems and tactics. Pathfinder, Admiral Harrison's voice crackled through the static. What's your tactical assessment? Jake looked at Zara, who was already analyzing the enemy formations on her screens. Their shields are adaptive but have a recharge cycle. Focus fire from multiple ships can overwhelm them. Confirmed, Zara added, broadcasting on the Vorthan frequencies. Syndicate vessels have weak points at their engine nacelles. Concentrated, plasma fire can disable their maneuverability. For the next 20 minutes, Jake and Zara served as battlefield coordinators, using their unique position and combined knowledge to guide both fleets in their fight against the common enemy. The Pathfinder darted between the larger ships, relaying targeting information and tactical updates. Human destroyer Defiant. You have 3 Syndicate fighters on your starboard flank, Jake transmitted. Vorthan cruiser Starwind, enemy command. Ship is charging main weapon. Evasive maneuvers recommended, Zara added. Gradually, the tide began to turn. Human and Vorthan ships started working together, sharing targeting data and coordinating attacks. Jake watched with amazement as 2 species who had been at war for a decade began fighting as allies against their common foe. Syndicate command ship is taking heavy damage, Zara reported. Their fleet is beginning to withdraw. Let them go, Jake said. Both our fleets have taken casualties. We need to regroup and tend to the wounded. As the surviving Syndicate ships retreated into hyperspace, an unusual quiet fell over the battlefield. Human and Vorthan vessels floated side by side, their crews working to repair damage and rescue survivors. Pathfinder. Admiral Harrison's voice came through the comm. Report to the flagship immediately and bring your passengers. Jake looked at Zara, who was monitoring Vorthon communications. My fleet commander has issued the same order, she said. Sounds like we're about to have the galaxy's most unusual diplomatic meeting, Jake observed. Rex barked once happily, as if to say the hard part was over. Jake hoped the dog was right. A new dawn for two worlds, the conference room aboard. The human flagship Endeavour had been hastily reconfigured to accommodate both species. Environmental controls maintained a compromise atmosphere that both humans and Vorthons could breathe comfortably, while translation devices ensured perfect communication between all parties. Jake sat at one end of the long table, still wearing his battle-worn uniform with Rex lying quietly at his feet. The dog had been officially declared a diplomatic observer, a designation that amused everyone present despite the gravity of the situation. Zara sat beside Jake, her violet eyes taking in the assembled fleet commanders from both sides. Admiral Harrison presided over the human delegation, while Fleet Commander Veltar led the Vorthons. Jake had been surprised to learn that Veltar was Zara's father, though the family resemblance was unmistakable in their shared bearing and intelligent eyes. Let me understand this correctly, Admiral Harrison said, reviewing the data displays that filled the room's walls. For 10 years, both our civilizations have been manipulated into a prolonged conflict by arms dealers who planned to conquer us both once we were sufficiently weakened. That is correct, Commander Veltar replied, his voice carrying the same musical quality as his daughter's. The evidence is overwhelming. Financial records, communication intercepts, weapon shipments. The Syndicate has been orchestrating this war from the beginning. Jake cleared his throat. With respect, sirs, the question now is what we do about it. The Syndicate fleet has retreated, but they'll be back, and next time they'll be better prepared. Agreed. Admiral Harrison nodded. Our preliminary assessment suggests we've only faced a fraction of their total force. This was likely a test of our combined capabilities. Zara activated her personal data device, projecting a star chart that showed known Syndicate operations. My analysis of captured communications suggests they have at least 12 major fleets scattered throughout this sector. What we faced today was merely one battle group. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Even working together, human and Vorthon forces were significantly outnumbered by their true enemy. There is something else, Commander Veltar said quietly. Something my daughter discovered in the intelligence she retrieved. All eyes turned to Zara, who stood and activated another display. The Syndicate is not just interested in our territories. They are systematically targeting worlds with specific resources, rare minerals that enhance their adaptive technology, biological compounds that extend lifespans, and most critically, intelligent populations that can be converted into their workforce. Converted? Admiral Harrison asked sharply. Neural modification, Zara explained grimly. The Syndicate does not conquer in the traditional sense. They transform conquered populations into willing servants through advanced psychological conditioning. Entire civilizations become part of their collective, retaining their skills and knowledge, but losing their independence. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. How many worlds have they already taken? Commander Veltar consulted his own data pad. According to the intelligence my daughter gathered, at least 47 worlds across 6 sectors. Billions of beings now serve the Yao Syndicate willingly, believing they are part of a glorious galactic empire. Rex whined softly, sensing the tension in the room. Jake reached down to scratch the dog's ears, drawing comfort from his loyal companion's presence. So what's our move? Jake asked. We can't fight them separately. Even together we're outnumbered and outgunned. But we have something they do not expect, Zara said, a slight smile playing across her features. Unity born from understanding rather than conquest. Admiral Harrison leaned forward. Explain. The Syndicate succeeds through division and manipulation, Commander Veltar elaborated. They turn species against each other, then absorb the survivors. But we have proven that former enemies can become allies when faced with truth. You're talking about more than just our two species, Jake realized. You want to unite other worlds against the Syndicate. Exactly, Zara confirmed. There are dozens of civilizations in this sector that have had conflicts with their neighbors. If we can show them what we have learned, demonstrate that cooperation is possible. We could build a coalition, Admiral Harrison finished. A united front against the real threat. The next several hours were spent in intensive planning. Military strategists from both fleets worked together to analyze Syndicate tactics and weaknesses. Diplomatic Corps personnel began drafting messages to neutral worlds and even former enemies, explaining the true nature of the galactic situation. Throughout it all, Jake found himself serving as an unofficial liaison between the two sides. His experience with Zara had given him unique insights into both human and Vorthan psychology, while Rex's calming presence seemed to ease tensions whenever discussions became heated. Sergeant Morrison, Admiral Harrison said during a brief recess, I'm recommending you for immediate promotion to lieutenant. Your actions today have quite literally changed the course of galactic history. Thank you, sir, Jake replied, but I can't take credit for this. Rex found Zara first. All I did was listen to my dog. The Admiral smiled. Sometimes the most profound wisdom comes from the simplest sources. Speaking of which, we're going to need experienced officers for the new joint command structure we're establishing. Would you be interested in a transfer to the Diplomatic Corps? Jake looked at Zara, who was deep in conversation with her father about Vorthan crystal technology that could enhance human ships. Rex was lying nearby, contentedly, accepting attention from Vorthan crew members who seemed fascinated by the concept of companion animals. I think I'd like that, sir, Jake said. Someone's going to need to help other species understand that working together is better than fighting apart. 3 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the Joint Station Unity 1, watching as ships from a dozen different species worked together to construct the largest space station ever built. The coalition against the Syndicate had grown beyond anyone's expectations, with former enemies setting aside centuries of conflict to face the common threat. Rex padded up beside him, the dog now wearing a specially designed diplomatic vest that identified him as an official peace envoy. The vest was covered in patches from every member species of the coalition, a testament to the bridges that could be built when people looked beyond surface differences. Admiring our handiwork? Zara asked, joining them at the observation window. She now wore the uniform of the Coalition Diplomatic Corps, her Vorthan rank insignia displayed alongside human decorations for valor. Hard to believe it all started with Rex finding you in those ruins, Jake said, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. Their relationship had developed naturally over the months of working together, proving that understanding could blossom into something deeper when given the chance. Rex knew, Zara said, reaching down to pet the dog's head. He saw what we could not see, that we were never really enemies, just two peoples kept apart by fear and manipulation. A new ship approached the station, its design unlike any they had seen before. The sleek vessel bore the markings of the Etherian Collective, a species that had been contacted just days earlier. Our newest allies, Jake observed. That makes 15 species in the coalition. And the Syndicate? Zara asked. Still out there, but they're having to adapt to a very different galaxy than the one they expected to conquer. Every world they approach now receives warnings about their true nature. Their divide and conquer strategy is failing. Rex barked once, drawing their attention to another part of the viewport. In the distance, a mixed squadron of human and Vorthan fighters was conducting training exercises with ships from 3 other species. The pilots communicated seamlessly, their different languages translated in real time as they worked together with perfect coordination. The children will grow up differently, Zara mused. Human and Vorthan children learning together, playing together. They will never know the hatred that divided our parents. Thanks to a dog who refused to see differences, Jake added. Their conversation was interrupted by an announcement over the station's communication system. All diplomatic staff to Conference Room Alpha. We have received a response from the Hegemony worlds regarding coalition membership. Jake and Zara exchanged glances. The hegemony represented over 100 star systems, and their decision could tip the balance of power in the galaxy definitively against the Syndicate. Duty calls, Jake said. Indeed it does, Zara agreed. Rex, ready for another diplomatic mission? The dog barked enthusiastically and trotted toward the conference room, his tail wagging. In the months since that first meeting in the ruins, Rex had become something of a celebrity throughout the coalition. Stories of the dog who helped end a war had spread to every member world, and children of a dozen species now knew his name. As they walked through the station's corridors, Jake reflected on how much had changed. The war between humans and Vortons seemed like ancient history now, replaced by a partnership that grew stronger every day. The Syndicate still posed a threat, but they faced a united galaxy instead of divided, weakened civilizations. The conference room was filled with representatives from all coalition species, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of languages that the universal translators converted into meaning. At the center of it all sat Rex, calmly observing the proceedings as if he understood every word. The hegemony has voted, announced the lead diplomat, a crystalline being whose species communicated through controlled light emissions. They have agreed to join the coalition with the following statement. Any alliance that can turn enemies into family through the wisdom of a simple animal is worthy of our support. Cheers erupted throughout the room in a dozen different forms. Some species applauded, others whistled, and a few expressed joy through harmonic resonance that made the station's hull vibrate gently. Jake looked down at Rex, who was panting happily as representatives from various species offered him treats appropriate to his biology. The dog had no idea that his simple act of compassion had reshaped galactic civilization, and somehow that made it even more meaningful. "What are you thinking about?" Zara asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "I'm thinking about choice," Jake replied. "Every day we all make choices about how to treat others. Most of the time those choices seem small and unimportant, but sometimes they change everything," Zara finished. Rex barked once in agreement, then settled down for a nap, confident that the galaxy was in good hands. Outside the station, construction continued on humanity's greatest achievement, not a weapon or a fortress, but a symbol of what was possible when different peoples chose to see past their differences to the common bonds that united them all. The age of the Syndicate's manipulation was ending, replaced by an era of cooperation that would echo through the stars for generations to come. And it had all begun with a dog who saw an injured being and decided that suffering knew no species, and a human who trusted his companion's judgment over the prejudices of war. In the end, the galaxy was saved not by superior firepower or advanced technology, but by the simple recognition that every thinking being deserved compassion, regardless of what world they called home or what they looked like under an alien sun. Rex would have been proud if he had understood the full scope of what his actions had accomplished. But perhaps his innocent wisdom was exactly what the galaxy had needed, the reminder that sometimes the most profound truths are the simplest ones, and that love in all its forms truly can conquer all.